Raw Christian Men's Podcast, tackling the important issues from a biblical perspective.
Welcome back to the Raw Christian Men's Podcast, a place for authentic, real-life discussion on faith, masculinity, and living as a Christian man in today's world. Today's episode will be a little bit different. I'm calling it, quote-unquote, Is It a Sin? And we'll be going over a list of things that people, both Christian and non-Christian, commonly ask if it's a sin to do. I am Brad Martin. I am joined by Kyle Miller and Tristan Miller, and making a return from his hiatus, we have Aaron Willison, one of the OGs on the show.
Word.
So, welcome back.
Appreciate that. Glad to be here.
Not a lot to talk about in the beginning, so we'll just dive right into it. These are just normal questions that both non-believers, new believers, and sometimes even believers that have been believers for quite a while struggle with, or are kind of confused about, So we'll talk about it. We'll give our 2 cents. We'll talk about if it's biblical or not, but we'll just dive right into it. I would say one of the most common questions about if it's a sin or not would be cursing and swearing. Is it a sin?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a great answer. I love that.
Yep.
Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
But
it says somewhere in the Bible, I don't know the exact verse, but it says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. I would classify cursing or swearing as unwholesome talk.
I think you could probably throw like gossip in there, talking down about people. I don't know biblically if that goes into swearing, but while we're on the topic, it's command your tongue, control your tongue.
that would be another. I mean, I don't have it gossiping on my list, but that would be another one. Like question, like
slander.
It's not really something that people think about as being a sin, but
So I've heard like what you just said there, like the cursing. Like some people think like cursing is like I'm cursing you.
Oh,
like just normal talk. Like guys are working. Something happens, smash your hammer, against your thumb or something, and they say something is different than when they are actually looking at Aaron and saying this about you and cursing at you. And some people think, well, that's what they're talking about in the Bible is a sin. And that is what they're talking about, but they're also talking about unwholesome.
So I've actually talked to Bill about this. For anybody that doesn't know, Bill's our preacher, and he's from Kentucky. He's a great guy. Grew up in a rural area, but I was talking to him about this. Who knows why it came up, but of course it was me. And he goes, that's just how farmers talk. He goes, I never thought anything of it. He goes, he told me a story when he first got into ministry. He went to a farm, and this guy was just letting it fly. And he asked, one of his classmates in college, like, is that normal? He goes, that's just how they talk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you don't like to do it, but it happens.
Yeah.
And, I think I can speak for all of us. We've all probably let one slip. So
and I think it's like you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like it's a lot of it has to do with culture too. Mm-hmm. Like you said, farmers. It's just the way farmers talk. Military. If anybody has any background in the military or any familiarity with the military, I mean, it's pretty prevalent. I mean, as they say, cuss like a sailor. I mean, but it goes across all branches. If you work blue collar jobs anywhere, primarily a factory. I work in a factory. Kyle, you work in a factory. Like, how often do you hear?
Every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
every person I work with.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. My job in the military required me to give briefings and updates to commanders. And there was a guy that I worked with who had the same job as I did, just I would say a different echelon. It's a different level, but same job, had to brief, higher ups or brief, people from outside. And it's like every other word out of his mouth was, F word and all that. But and this is during like when you're supposed to be professional and give briefs, and he's just letting it rip. I'm like, okay, I mean,
Far out.
that's how we're doing it. But
So wouldn't it be like, I feel like cussing is a lack of self-control.
yeah,
Is it not?
At me next time. I'm just kidding.
I would agree with that.
I mean, I think
we are called to control our tongues, and I think a lot of times when we cuss, I don't say it's all times. A lot of times when somebody cusses, it's coming from a place of anger or like frustration or something like that. That's usually when it slips.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was 95 degrees out today, and an 80-pound calf slipped under the trailer door, and I'll tell you what, I was asking for forgiveness. And it came from anger, so, it's just...
yeah.
See, that's having a lack of self-control.
Yeah,
and God calls
100%.
us to have self-control.
Yeah, but I guess to kind of round it off here, like it happens,
Yeah.
and understand it, try not to do it, ask for forgiveness, and that's a big deal is learning how to ask for forgiveness. Like, God, I apologize. I ask you to help me be better. I ask for your forgiveness.
Yeah.
Actively work to try to
Yeah.
avoid it. That's something that I've tried to learn. Like
I like how
being in the military, like
It's hard when you're around.
it was common. So like it's just you let it ride, and then and I didn't want that to be the way that I talked at home. So I learned how to flip a switch. So the way I talked in the office was a lot different than the way I talked at home, and then I definitely don't do it around the kids. But trying to flip that switch permanently, that it can be tough.
Yeah. I think as your faith grows, it gets easier.
Yeah.
I'm kind of military. You mentioned military. You watch Hacksaw Ridge and you see that fellow that's living faithful. That's the guy you want to be around because he's the one God's answering prayers.
I've never seen
they're-
Hacksaw Ridge.
Well, that's a good one. You ought to try it.
Great
You
one.
like it.
Check her
The
out.
last day, they're not going up there without him.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I don't know what he's doing. He's over there praying for us, but we're not leaving this beach until
It's a true story.
he gets
so-
up there.
Yeah.
He was a medic. He didn't carry a gun. He saved a lot of people.
Don't tell the whole story. He hasn't seen the movie.
Okay, sorry.
It's
Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
It's such a,
Hacksaw Ridge.
It's really good.
it's such a good show.
But yeah, I think as your faith grows, you start to realize that you're supposed to be living holy because God's holy, and so you really start fighting against that. And let's say you see somebody that you've tried to witness to, and this is what really starts getting you. You tried to witness to them, and they don't believe, and they're like, "Well, you don't look at how you live. Look at what you say.
Yeah.
What makes you different?
Yeah.
You're not." And then I know that hit home for me. And it's like I had a guy say to me, "Well, if I come to Jesus, it won't be because of you." Now that's pretty hard to hear. And then you're
I should
like,
have that tattooed on my forehead. I'll tell you what.
"You've heard that before?"
I have heard that before.
Yeah. And that weighs on you, especially if that person, you don't know what their path's going to be, and you could have been the person that led a different way.
And they could in the future come to Christ,
Right.
but how much quicker could it have happened?
Right.
How much could he have avoided
Yeah.
being outside of that relationship?
Yeah.
It's hard to.
And I still know that person, and I would say today he would go, "You changed."
Yeah.
And I can change too. So, there is they see where you fall a little bit. So, and I don't go real hard on that stuff because the first thing I want anybody to believe is in Jesus. I mean, so if they're cussing and whatever, I just let it go. It's not something I die on with somebody that's not a believer. But if you believe and I hear you, I'm like, man, I don't have to answer, but you do, buddy. So you can do what you want.
We'll talk a little bit more about it at the end, I think, or I would like to. But you don't have to have all your ducks in a row before you come to Christ.
Right. Absolutely.
When you come to God because you know that you are imperfect, you know that you're a sinner,
Right.
then you'll start feeling the conviction from the Holy Spirit of what you need to change from your life or what you need to remove from your life. That's when the change actually happens.
Right.
You don't have to get perfect before starting a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
He says, come as you are, but he doesn't say stay as you are.
You can't stay as you are.
Yeah, I think I made that reference last night in
Yeah.
our podcast, talking about how, the healthy people don't need a doctor.
Yes.
So Jesus
I
wants you to
got
come
this
when
anyways.
you're sick. Shout out the Come and See podcast.
Yes.
It's coming soon.
Which you guys did very well last night. For those listening, we do. We're catering to the audience mainly based amongst men.
Right.
I would say their podcast that they're starting up, they got the first episode recorded last night, but they're going to cater more toward young adults, both sex. So definitely worth a listen. So go and check them out. They should be launching their episodes here in a couple weeks, I think.
A few weeks, yeah.
So definitely go check them out.
It's called Come and See.
Come and see.
Yeah.
So,
Bang bang.
but
So
good.
So it's actually, disclaimer. I'm the only one here without an outline. So this is God working through everything. I don't need your outline.
I'm winging it.
But I on my TikTok page, I've been posting a lot of stuff about our farm and kind of stuff we do. The guys I work for, and I've kind of decided I need to use the platform to spread some gospel, and it's kind of something where it's like, well, if I'm gonna have success here, it needs to glorify God. So I've actually put out 2 videos about just being a man in ag and the industry, kind of what we're perceived to be and kind of who we really are, and like, it's all right.
Aaron Wilson going to become a TikTok influencer?
Don't I don't like the I word. But it's just like, yeah, sometimes, we deal with some rough stuff on a constantly daily basis. And a lot of times we're in survival mode, but that's all right. God still loves us. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have perfect tempers and not yell at tractors or cows. Like, things happen outside of our control. And my thing is, it's like, that's all right. That's where you're at. Like, that's what you do. We're taking care of God's creation. It's frustrating, but we're doing it and we're showing up, and He loves you for it.
Yeah.
So, flip side, how do you guys feel about fake curse words?
Fake curse words?
So, like, that's kind of
Like jackwagon?
That's been our
Crap. I mean, what are we talking about?
like stuck in a ditch.
Instead of
It's like
Some of
that's how on our place we're trying to like clean up our language. But I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm not wearing socks right now because I had an 800-pound steer headbutt me in the head and stomp on my foot, and all I could think of was, you are stuck in a ditch. And it's like, that's the control. So I
I don't know what to think about that, because you're controlling yourself.
Well, because it
but
really makes you
your
it's
intent behind it.
I mean, I limped all the way up these 3 flights of stairs to get up here, and I was thinking it the whole way up.
Yeah.
But that's like, we're actively choosing different words, because like, things happen out of our control, and it's like reactionary.
I think that's a good thing, though, because you're trying.
We're trying.
You're trying to. I mean, you're trying to honor God by not doing something. I mean, would it be better if you could just control yourself? And yes, but there's situations where.
I mean, you can.
I mean, I've never had that kind of situation, but
You can say it both ways. Like, I mean, if you think about it, when in the time of Jesus, the curse words that were, that are popular now, I guess, I would say weren't even invented.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have had something similar, but like, obviously they're not using the same curse words that we're using now. But it's your intent behind it, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's a tough one, because yes, you are actively trying to clean it up, like you're using non-curse words, but your intent behind why you're using it.
But
That's
it makes
where
you, like, it doesn't
like gray area.
roll off easy. Like in the past, where it's just like, it's more like, and then in that moment, it's
time to
just like
downshift.
dials you back. It's kind of like a rumble strip.
Yeah,
slow you down.
I don't know how to answer that one, because that's
know.
tough, because I could go either way.
Yeah, it's like but like, as soon as that was over, I was like, hey, Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know why this happened, but
So, and going along the lines with what we were just talking, like we can blame culture, saying, "Oh, well, it's just that's the way that we talked in the military. It's the way that factory workers talk." Or, I've seen videos where like there's countries in Europe that's just like commonplace for them to just curse, and it's not really considered like a curse word. It's just like filler words.
yeah.
But
100%.
like, it's just the way their culture is.
I got cousins from Ireland.
And they just they're
Every other word, like unconscious.
the whole island.
just normal.
It's just normal.
It's just normal talk, and they're not doing it in a mean,
Hateful-
or anger.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
I work with guys that's how they are, and
It took a couple conversations where I was like, "Are you dropping a
so that's why it's hard for them.
F-bomb into every other word?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's fine."
But they don't.
All right.
They're not thinking of it maliciously.
Yeah.
Right.
So for them, when you start saying, "Hey, don't let this unwholesome stuff come out of your mouth," they're like, "That's just how all of us talk," That,
But the word is still
right?
malicious.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and
It can
its
cause someone
essence.
else to.
And as followers of Christ, we're supposed to set an example.
And we're supposed to live separate from the world, separate from culture.
Yeah.
So
separate ourselves from the flesh, deny our.
yeah.
I know we're on question 1, by the way.
We are.
But before we get off the cursing, the biggest thing I think that people really should pay attention to, regardless of what you're going to argue about, because my mom didn't like the word sucks, so I tried to avoid that until she was okay with that. But using the Lord's name in vain. When you curse God's name,
Yes.
you're cursing the one who can save you. So that one, it was punishable by death in the Old Testament. Most people don't even know that, and they don't even know why they're doing it. They're just using it, and it literally says that is what they will do. In the end times, people will just curse God's name, unknowing, just out of no reason.
Yeah.
And so you really need to be careful.
Familiar with what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So that's one thing you just really got to be careful about, is not using the Lord's name in vain, and take it serious.
It's not something. You got to take it serious. It's not something you just throw around willy nilly.
Yeah.
Well, and
very
you'll
serious.
see, like, as you clean your tongue up and make those subtle changes, people pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll go into a sales meeting, a guy will be letting it fly, and then
Yeah.
we'll just speak in a different manner. And it's like, I can tell when I talk to somebody, they like flip the switch. It's like, okay, we're not gonna, like, they clean it up for that situation. But it's, I don't know, kind of like monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
Because I feel like people respect it,
Yeah.
but it's like,
I think most people, they don't want to be like they're not trying to go out of their way to offend anybody with their language, I would say. So, and I've seen it, and I think I've probably even done it in the past. But like, if you are just casually, dropping some curse words or whatever, and then whoever you're talking to is saying like, "Well, that darn thing," or shoot, they're saying words other than kind of like what you're talking about. Like,
I'm telling you, they're using alternative cursing words,
but they're using what wouldn't be considered curse words. And like, it shifts your mentality as the person talking to them, and then you kind of start to avoid it as well.
Yep.
Because you're not trying to go out of your way to offend anybody. Yep. It's just conversation, at least in my experience.
Yep. 100%.
So it's definitely like it's definitely something that you
contagious.
could. It's contagious. You could initiate change in other people's life just by not doing it.
Yeah, and that might even look like them using less words when they're around you.
Yeah.
And not everyone else, but that's
But it's a start.
It's a small percentage, but it's a percentage.
It's a start.
A win is a win.
Yeah.
In
So
my mind.
there are multiple verses in the Bible that talks about that we should not be cursing. Tristan alluded to one while ago, and it was actually the very first one I have listed. It's Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. It says, "Let no corrupt talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." And then Colossians 3:8 says, "But now you must put them all away, anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth." And then Matthew 12:36 says, "I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word that they speak." So that's talking about at the end, when we are standing before God,
Yeah.
everything that you've said in the past. Even if you don't remember it now, you will be held accountable for it.
Yeah.
And then that's going to be the difference between believers and non-believers, where believers, we're actually going to have Jesus standing in for us as our intercessor, or basically, like I consider him almost like a defense attorney.
Yeah.
So he's going to be interceding on our behalf, and whereas non-believers aren't going to have that. So you have to be accountable for everything you've said. So are you going to have Jesus on your side, who's already paid for that, or are you not? And then you're going to have to pay for it. And then everybody, we've said it multiple times before, the wages of sin is death.
Yep.
So,
Well, you guys seen The Grinch?
the Grinch?
That's what I always think about, like the Jim Carrey Grinch. I did, officer. I stole Christmas, and I'm sorry. Arrest me.
Yeah.
He goes, arrest him. He goes, you heard him. He goes, I heard him all right. He said he was sorry.
Yeah.
And I was just, it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Jesus is probably like, you know what?
He said he was sorry.
He said he was sorry.
Yeah.
You know?
So we'll move on to the next one. Drinking alcohol. Is drinking alcohol a sin?
I say,
I don't know the verse, but, don't be drunk.
yep.
Jesus turned water to wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they drank a lot in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Just in the Bible in general, they drank a lot of alcohol. They didn't overindulge in certain. I mean, I guess some people did, and it was looked down on.
Like, eat,
it
drink,
is
and
a
be
sin.
merry,
It's
but don't
like
drink.
it goes back to that lack of self control that I
Yes.
talked about earlier. It's that drunkenness is a sin, but I think that when you just are wanting to enjoy a glass of wine or a beer every once in a while, like that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the Holy Spirit is going to come into play, and it's going to be extremely important to have that relationship with God, so you can be aware when you are feeling convicted, like, hey, this may be starting to be a problem, or you're overindulging into it, and then that's when you need to really throttle back or remove it completely from your life. I agree. I would say that just drinking alcohol inherently is not a sin. It's the scripture warns against drunkenness, not against drinking itself. There are some people that take that as, well, I don't want to drink alcohol, or you shouldn't drink alcohol. If that's the way that you feel convicted, even if you don't have a problem, then yes, I think you need to listen to that conviction, and it's not going to be harmful to not partake in alcohol if you choose not to. But I think if, like Tristan just said, if you are having a beer on occasion with dinner or something like that, or you're just hanging out, and I mean, I don't know how many times I've been working outside in the hot weather, and you come inside, it's just a nice cold beer just hits the spot.
Yeah,
But
it does.
it's
You can't say that because you don't like beer.
No, but I like a wine cooler.
the wine
Yeah.
cooler, a Zima.
Yeah, whatever,
Like little Angry Orchards,
Hey, but
hard apple cider.
Those are too hard.
so I would say alcohol inherently is not a sin. Drunkenness is, but we also need to be aware of the people around us, right?
Yeah,
So,
true.
and Paul talks about this. I can't remember the exact book, but he
It's about stumbling.
No.
Others to stumble.
calls it. Yeah, it's because the reference was mainly for when you're partaking in food that might have been offered up as a sacrifice.
Oh,
Like, as
okay.
long as, like, if you're not aware if it has or not, because there was argument amongst the church members at the time, like, you should never, almost like you're not eating with non-believers because you're not aware of where their food
Right.
has come from, if it has been sacrificed or not
Yeah.
to another god. But ultimately, Scripture tells us that if you're not partaking in the sacrifice, or if you're not even aware if it's been sacrificed to another god or not, that itself is not a sin. But if what you're doing is going to cause somebody else to fall into sin,
Yeah.
then we're called to not do it, right? So if you're drinking in front of somebody who has an alcohol problem, and that's going to cause them to maybe fall back into temptation, then obviously that's something that we need to make sure we take a step back from and we don't do in front of them. Right.
Well, and that's something that you brought up in our men's group. We go out from time to time, and it's like, yeah, we don't have a problem if you have a beer. I mean, obviously nobody's going to a men's group to tie one on, but just knowing your audience, knowing your crowd. And you said if that's you asked everybody if that's a problem with anybody, we won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill has said something. This was a while ago. He said, I won't go to a bar and have a drink because I don't want that to turn somebody away from Christ because the preacher's at the bar having a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand where he's coming from,
But then me, on the other hand, I say once a quarter, my buddies wrote me into going out. And like clockwork, every time I go to a bar, I talk to somebody about Christ.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. Like the last time, it was 2 or 3 months ago. It was a guy I knew from a long time ago, and he just asked how I was doing. And, through conversation, we found common ground and common struggle, something that I'd actually been through. And we just connected. I prayed for him at the bar in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And he texted me. I said, I got, I need one thing from this. I need your phone number. And he gave me his phone number. I called him. I prayed for him a couple times. And then he texted me a couple weeks ago. He found church.
Nice. Yeah. I think that's a great example because, I mean,
did I have some beers? Yeah. But was that where I was called to serve?
You're not attacking it from a place of hypocrisy either. Like, it's not like you're, like you said, you're not going and getting drunk and then trying to talk to somebody about Jesus and saying, hey, it's okay because you have Jesus and you just ask for forgiveness. You're not going that route.
Right.
But like, I would say bars are, there are social gatherings.
Some people go there to sort some stuff out.
Yeah.
And that's find what they're looking for.
That could have been a good mission field at the time.
Yeah.
So.
It's happened 3 or 4 times. It's like, I don't like going.
Yeah. But the one thing I will say is that the convictions that some people have, like they will feel like it is wrong to drink altogether.
Yeah.
And forcing that upon other people, you should not do if you're a Christian. Because I know there's Christians out there that are like, you shouldn't drink. Well, the Bible literally says nothing about not drinking. It actually tells,
be merry.
There's actually places where it says to put wine in your water and all kinds of stuff. So they were never against wine or alcohol or any of that kind of stuff. What they were against is drunkenness because you lose your mindset.
Yes.
And you're easily steered in any direction.
Yep.
And that's what you're not supposed to do because you represent God. So forcing your convictions on someone else, and just like Bill, when he said that, he's in a different position. He's judged harder according to the Bible because of where he's at. He's going to make decisions based on what he is convicted by God.
And there are people that are holding him to a higher standard just because of his position.
And not just him, God. God says it. It's written down that God's going to hold him at a different level.
I remember him telling a story, and we're a little tangent, and we'll get back on track. But it has to do with him being a pastor and the example that he sets. There was a story he tells about how he passed somebody on the road, and for those who don't know, Bill likes to drive a little quicker than some people might be comfortable with, but and he'll admit it. But he passed somebody on the road that was a member of the church, and then the guy went up to him like one of the next Sundays, like, "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Like, kind of like, and Bill thought he was just joking or whatever, and the guy he didn't see the guy at church for a little while, and then he did a little bit of digging and come to find out that like he expected Bill to follow. That to him was like Bill broke the law, and him being a preacher, he needs to be held accountable or hold himself to a higher standard where he doesn't break the law, even if it's speeding. And we kind of look at speeding as like, as long as you're not going
a guideline.
too crazy.
Yeah, you want to talk conviction? Let's break it all the way.
It's a suggestion, right? That's what a lot of people think of it as. But he took like a hard line, like if he's willing to break the speed limit, what other laws or what other commandments or whatever is he willing to break? And he was out of church for a long time.
Yeah.
because of the standard he held Bill to. And so that's one of those examples he gives. Like I'm a lot more aware of what I do around people because I know that, there's a certain expectation
Sure.
that comes with being a preacher, certain standard that you're going to be held to. And
Yeah.
you could very easily shy people away
Yeah.
from Christ.
That's something before you take a position in the church as a deacon or an elder or any position where you're taking, you got to really be careful because you are going to be held to a different judgment by God. And so he makes that pretty clear. It's like we talked about oaths. You don't make oaths to God unless you're going to honor them.
Yeah.
So, Bill being convicted by that, and his job is to bring people to Christ. That is his sole job. And so I get where he's coming from.
So, all right. So I'd say short answer: drinking alcohol, not a sin. Overindulgence would be the sin. That's
Definitely.
that line that you're crossing. Or if you're going to make other people fall into temptation and cause them to sin, then obviously you want to avoid it. So, all right. Moving on. Secular movies and music. So, secular being non-Christian themed. And I'm not saying non-Christian as like it's anti-Christian. It's just it doesn't fall under a Christian genre. So secular movies or secular music considered sinful.
See, that's very convicting for me because I listen to like Red Dirt, Texas kind of country.
Yeah.
And a lot of, kind of banjo and harmonica stuff. There's nobody that makes that kind of music in Christian that crosses over. So it's like the Christian, like, I don't know, there's some songs in there. Okay, so I say I like that, but I also like the Kanye West God Is song. I don't know if you've heard that, but Kanye made gospel music.
For a little short time, yeah.
Yeah. So, like I sprinkle it in there, but it's like I just don't have a playlist of worship bangers that I genuinely enjoy listening to. And I just can't get myself to love the concert versions of Hillsong, whatever.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with music of any genre unless it is obviously, blasphemy against God or
Incredible cursing.
or it is it's not something that you can take around your family and or honor God with. Like if you're singing it in the car, screaming at the top of your lungs, and this is your jam, and it's a song that's dropping the F-bomb every 5 seconds, or it's saying slurs, or
Talking about partying or
trapping,
trapping.
or sexual references or whatever it is. I don't think that's okay, and I don't think that's biblical.
Yeah.
And I would say that's a sin.
This is a dicey one because there's a lot of there's just so much music and there's so many movies and so many TV shows. Like in today's world, there's just way more stimuli than there's ever been.
Yeah.
And just the amount of things there are to consume is just atrocious.
I would almost argue it's easier now to determine if something is godly or not godly.
Yeah.
Because before, even though it might not have been, considered Christian or like a Christian genre, there was a certain standard that was to be held, like whether it be on TV or radio.
PG-13 really was just PG-13.
Yeah. And
it's freaking ridiculous now.
so what do you think, Kyle? Secular music, secular movies, sinful or not?
I don't think they have to be. I don't think Leave It to Beaver back then was, it was just normal. People just didn't do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
They edited a lot of stuff off of TV, and it was, today, you really got to be careful what you watch.
Yeah.
Even me watching Disney movies from old time to now, it's rough to watch them because they're trying to put a certain idea in your children's mind.
It's propaganda.
There is an indoctrination going on.
Yeah. So you have to ask yourself, I think, probably, especially if you're getting ready to raise children, what's more important to you? They get the entertainment they want, or they make it into heaven?
Yeah.
Because that's really what you're fighting against. You have to remember Satan was like very musically talented. So why is there such a...
He didn't beat Johnny down in Georgia.
He did lose a fiddle.
He did lose a fiddle. You're right.
Yes, he did.
But he's been practicing since.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, when you're raising your kids, what's more important to you? Because you have eternity with God or an eternity away from God. So you really got to weigh that. And it's really tough on parents today because it's not the Leave It to Beaver kind of shows on TV where everybody could sit down and watch them. So you can't even go sometimes in between. If you're watching a football game or a basketball game, you can't even go in between without the commercials being bad. You know, it's like...
So I have a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. So, I mean, I'm in the trenches with this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it is ridiculous. We'll put on a show, like a rendition of a show I used to watch. Like, I'll just say it. There's a Scooby-Doo, a new version of the full animation Scooby-Doo. We won't watch it.
Yeah.
I watched one episode, and I'm like, this is way too dark. I don't like it, which I hate scary anything. I'm like, we're not doing it. And, my son loves it, so we go find, like, the
Old
80s version
Hanna-Barbera.
or 70s or 60s or whatever, where it's kind of cheesy, but it's like, hey, at least, and you can see how their attitudes change.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just the small stuff they pick up on, it drives me insane.
Yeah.
And, we bought a lot of books.
Yeah. There's a lot of good, cartoons and that kind of stuff. You can go back and get some of the
there
old
can
stuff.
be.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can find that stuff if you work hard at it, and it's making it so you have to work at it. But
Yeah.
I would tell
Way easier to get back.
I would tell everyone it's more important that your kids and yourself is in heaven than that entertainment. It's okay to walk out of a movie and waste some money than to turn yourself the other way. So, I know it's hard, but there's Sodom and Gomorrah. I think about this all the time. It says in the end, it's going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah. And you're either going to be on the side that gets destroyed or the one who gets to leave the city. And I say be on the side of leaving the city, so be real cautious.
Yeah.
You asked me.
No, you're.
That's where I fall. So I would rather everybody I look at be walking away from that stuff and maybe bring back some Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say, again, in its essence, secular music, secular movies aren't necessarily, it doesn't, just because they're secular doesn't make them sinful.
Right.
You have to look at you have to look on whether it goes against the biblical principles
Right.
or godly principles. If it goes against those, then yes, I would consider it sinful. You do have, I'm a big 90s country fan. Love 90s country. I would say that, it was definitely secular.
Yeah.
But I would say that it's clean.
Yeah.
I would feel comfortable listening to 90s country with my kids and not worry about what they're going to pick up.
Who's going to come in here and tell me that International Harvester is blasphemous?
No.
You know what I mean?
Nobody.
Exactly. Craig Morgan, he's the man.
Yeah. And
He has a song about what I love about Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean he's a Christian singer? Nah, maybe, probably not.
Yeah.
But I feel like his values are portrayed in his music just because he's respectful and, doesn't use bad language.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely genres of both music and movies that could fall under that same classification, where just because it's considered secular doesn't mean that it's sinful, because if you look at it, or if you're listening to it or you're watching it, the principles behind the music or that TV show or the movie, it's not going directly against what God, the godly principles or the biblical principles. Mm-hmm. Now, like I said at the beginning of this question, I think it's a lot easier to determine that nowadays, because you can look at music and there's some music that's overtly anti-God, anti-Christian. Yeah. And not just that, not even if it's going and attacking Christianity or attacking God. Look at a lot of the lyrics that are coming out of today's popular, talking about, a lot of promiscuous sex or a lot of drug use, a lot of alcohol use, a lot of,
You want to break my heart? Sorry. You know what broke my heart?
What?
When I actually pay attention to the words of Pink Pony Club.
Of what?
The Pink Pony Club.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, it's a great tune. And it's a great song. But boy, it's not a great song.
That's
It's
the
not a
girliest song ever.
Hey, I don't even want to hear it. All right, listen.
I'm not gonna lie though, when Kaylee showed me that song for the first time,
It's a bop.
I loved it.
It's a bop.
It was great. I
But
loved it.
I probably listened to it 20 times before I actually
Before you
caught on
realize
and
the
started
actual meaning
listening
of
to
it,
the
you're like,
words,
whoa.
And now I don't even listen to it. But it's like,
Yeah,
pulled a fast one on me.
Yep.
I'm right there with you.
I put my stamp on it. That was my song of the summer.
Yeah,
And now it's not. It's gone.
yeah.
Gone.
I'm
And I
like,
listen to that first time. As soon as I get in the truck in the morning, as soon as I get the tractor going, Pink Pony Club.
Wow.
Now, gone.
Yeah. Well,
Breaks my heart.
That's good that you've recognized it, though, and you're willing
Yeah.
to get it out.
But it kind of was like.
Because you could easily, compromise your morals and be like, it's not that bad, or it's just a song.
Well,
heard it?
no.
yeah.
That's probably a good thing.
I don't even know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
It's the,
So at the
it's the
beginning,
girliest
it says,
song ever.
boys and girls can all be queens every Saturday. And the
Yeah.
first time I heard that, I literally went, huh?
Well, like
Yeah.
it's got a good
Yeah.
beat to it. You're just kind of moving along.
Microwave, but it's, girl, what have you done? Your Pink Pony Club.
Wow.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I do,
But like when you break it down, like if you were to have to write a paragraph describing that song,
it would be very non-Christian at all.
Yeah, it's a
bad.
gender forward, rural person talking about becoming a stripper.
Yeah.
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 I'm
And,
like, because I was like, Pink
heard-
Pony Club, this is probably like,
This is great.
quasi
and,
country.
and that's where it gets
Wasn't
dangerous, because just like you were saying, like,
Yeah.
it's you like the beat,
Yeah.
it had a good energy behind it, and you're like,
Yep.
you're enjoying it, and then you subconsciously you're
Just
still
like,
taking in those
whoa,
lyrics.
you're
And
still- yeah.
What if you're young, influential mind, and you're
Yeah.
listening to that?
My 4-year-old,
Yeah.
it's like,
So
so we listen to like Minions music.
Minions.
So it's fine because there's no words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like YMCA. It's like bopa, bopa, dopa, da, da. When I was a kid, I listened to Crazy Frogs. We still listen to Crazy Frogs. So it's like that's our way around him not having to listen to my melancholy, country music, and keep the riff-raff out.
And I would even say, I would shift in a little bit like to the Christian genre. You have to be very cautious about some of the quote unquote Christian
You have
music.
to have your
Yeah.
guard up now more than ever.
And so I was listening to, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but there was he's a pretty popular preacher that he was just on a podcast, and he was talking about like, if you were standing in front of Satan and he's trying to, tempt you or whatever, and what would you do? And people are like, well, I just sing my favorite hymn. And they're like, what if he says, oh, I love that one. I wrote that one. Because if you think about it, what was Lucifer's job, his main role when he was still in heaven?
He's
Was
DJ.
he was basically in charge of music and worship.
Yeah.
So, and then he got, prideful and considered himself equal to God, and that was his downfall. So,
what's he going to use against you?
it's what he knows.
What he knows how to do the best.
Oh,
Yes.
there's a country song, Colby Acuff, and it's called "If I Were the Devil," and it talks about like, if I were the devil, I'd take every man and take his mind off Jesus sitting in a church stand. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
So like some of these guys I listen to, they do kind of jump out and like put out. If you listen to the words, it's like, wow, that was a really deep song. But it's just crazy.
And so you definitely got to keep your guard up. But I'd say the good news is if you're worried about this particular area, whether it's a sin to listen to certain types of music or certain genres. I don't think it is to listen to a certain genre, but you got to look at the intent behind it. I think Christian music has come a long way across all genres. But again, you got to keep your guard up, and you got to really look into what you're listening to. But there's a lot of, I would say, catchy or good Christian hip hop. If you're into hip hop, I like rock music. There's a lot of good Christian rock music or rock bands out.
I got a question. So, like, what kind of rock music? Like the hard stuff?
It depends.
Are you looking for Skillet?
Like 1,000 foot crunch?
here we are. We're
1,000
here.
1,000 foot crunch?
Seventh Day
Looky
Slumber.
there, looky
Yeah.
there.
I love
Walk
Seventh
right
Day
through
Slumber.
there.
Yeah.
That's like primary. That's the main band that's in my workout mix when I was
Yeah.
working out in my
Yeah.
garage.
Oh man, when I was
You ever heard
younger,
Have you heard them?
No, I don't care to. So this is my okay. That's false. I've heard them, and they're fine. That's just not my speed. So anything rock. Like
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't. Bad things will happen. I get riled up, so I have to listen to like.
It alters your mind.
Yeah, I listen to like Dave Stamey and like Wade Montgomery that sing songs about like their dog.
Yeah. See, I would say that
Nothing wrong with any
it
of that,
does
though.
Yeah.
to me also.
Like it cools me out.
I think I get a little bit amped up when I listen. I enjoy just
workout music.
Yeah, I enjoy like I would say Skillet would be a band that I could listen to just like driving in my truck and not be
Oh,
and I'd be all right.
I'd
But
be
like
screaming their
the
songs
TikTok
before.
trend 90 and a 35. That's a 90 and a 35 for me.
But if I'm working out and I'm throwing around like some heavy weight, I want something that's going to make me, not I want to say angry, but like start to kind of put me in that mindset
the
to where I
adrenaline
get
going.
aggressive. Yes,
Yeah.
gets the adrenaline going.
Yeah.
And there's, I would say, for me, like as far as in the Christian rock genre, somebody like Seventh Day Slumber, they take some pretty well-known Christian songs and they put a pretty heavy spin on it.
Oh, yeah.
And
Like Baz.
you're listening to Lion and the Lamb, but it's like a heavy
No,
metal.
like the beats in it.
Yeah,
all,
it's-
like
they're
their
bangers.
bass.
Oh, I
and-
love it.
See, I don't know. The sound of that just is like.
You got to listen to it. You got to listen to it.
Yeah. So where I was going with this is a friend of mine is going to, like a rock thing where they do like it's like the world's largest wall of death is what he showed me, and it's like a mosh pit type thing. But there's like a Christian band at it. So I'm like, well, there's like 3 bands here that have demon or Satan in the name. And then you have, I don't even know what the name of the Christian band is. Then you have the Christian band. And I'm like, that's just not where I want to be.
Yeah.
I don't listen like the super like
But
death
like
metal.
but like
I don't listen to
Yeah,
that.
but
It's
The
just,
crossover though, because it's like they're at a rock event with all these bands and a Christian band's there. So are they trying to reach people in that sector? Like that's me from the outside looking in. Like, okay, you have all these demonic junkies, and then you have a Christian band. Is that like their, what did you say earlier?
Is that you being in the bar kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is that their mission field?
Yeah.
I could,
Because like me personally, if I go out there and one of
see
them
that,
starts jawing around,
and I've talked with and I've listened to a lot of people they're not. I wouldn't consider them believers, but yet they'll talk about, oh, my favorite band is Red. That's a Christian rock band, and if that's gonna be what plants that little seed, and then eventually it gets cultivated into a relationship with God, then great.
yeah.
But
You guys are just heavier than me, I guess.
and it depends. Like, if,
the heavy
Well,
stuff.
I'm lighter.
I have
I'm
different-
definitely lighter than you, but that's okay.
wow,
Well, I loved rap
give you
growing
a
up.
pass there.
That's what I loved.
'90s hip hop.
I loved rap.
Oh yeah.
And when I was younger, it was not the good kind of
No,
rap. I don't know that there was a good kind of rap.
there was. Oh well.
Back when it started?
I would say they had to keep it cleaner, but there was
Yeah.
there's times
Hank
like
Williams wrote a rap song.
I mean,
if I listened to what some of the hip hop songs I listened to like back then,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's cleaner, but if you look at the lyrics and what goes behind, I'm like, wow, why was I even allowed to listen to that?
yeah, and I probably wasn't allowed to listen to most of the ones that I listened to. And I loved it because I played basketball.
Yeah.
I loved having that beat, and
You play basketball?
yeah, it's a few years ago.
Boy.
Yeah,
He was
It was a
pretty
few
good.
years ago.
yeah.
That's
it's
where I
a few
learned
years ago.
about everything that I learned.
Yeah, and I got heavier so he could beat me, but that's okay.
We are not going to start this on the podcast
Yeah, that's
because
right.
I got lots of words to say
Girls,
about that.
Girls, everybody calm down.
But anyway, what I was going to say about the rap was it got to be where if you wanted to listen to some of that and not, I couldn't sit there and listen to it with Jesus. There's no way.
Right.
No.
So it's at some point you got to say, I'm going to be spending my time with Jesus forever. So I don't want to spend my time here differently.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look at it different now. I'm going to try to find music I like, and I might like the country music, that Aaron's listening to. I might love it and be like, hey, let's go listen to this. And I'm trying to change my taste. I'm going to die to what I liked before and try to find something I can enjoy in life that's different.
So I have Toby Mac in my playlist. I have
Yeah.
one song, one Toby Mac song.
Yeah.
And that's like
Which one is it?
Lose My Soul.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
That's
Yeah.
It is. The Man D said at the end gets a little it's a little too spirited for me,
Yeah.
But like if you like Celine Dion, I mean, there's nothing wrong with most of her
Who's
songs.
Celine Dion?
I figured that was in your playlist. From
I don't even know who it is.
She's real good. You'll like her, I think.
Yeah, it's Pink Pony Club. But he
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
know
what
who
he's
Celine Dion is.
That's different. All right.
I would say one thing we definitely have to be careful about is when you're filling yourself up with that type of music. If it's secular and it starts to kind of inch closer to being going against godly principles, or it's overtly against godly principles, and you're filling yourself up with, day after day after day, you're not leaving any room with the positive stuff that you need to be filled up with, because we pour into other people, right? So how are you going to pour into somebody who's trying to establish themselves or establish a relationship with God? How are you going to pour into that person when you're filling yourself up with, gangster rap? I'm just throwing that out there, but
Yeah.
so that's what you got to be careful when it comes to the secular stuff. Again, one of those things, it's not inherently sinful, but you have to look at the motivation behind it.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, and
I think that's. Go ahead.
I think, as you walk and get closer to Christ, the lines are going to come out to you. They're going to appear to you easier.
They're going to stop being blurry.
Yeah. You're gonna know.
Just like you were saying with that song, like you really enjoyed it, and all of a sudden you started paying attention, or you started noticing
Yep.
certain lyrics, and like, man,
So,
this just goes against what I believe, and you were,
So I mean, to everybody, I think it's easy. It's easy for us to kind of say, "Well, here's the lines," but it took us a long time to get to the point where we can establish that baseline.
Yeah.
To where we even know. So, like, I guess my thoughts are, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you don't have, very strong faith, or I guess I shouldn't say that. If you're not very far in your walk with Christ, like it'll come. Just look for it, pay attention to it, and it'll be
Or
all right.
get somebody else's opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, ask somebody else. Hey, do you think this is okay?
I would say just make sure you pray about everything too. Like, ask God to give you that wisdom and to make that determination. If something's healthy for your relationship with Him or not. So He gave us a gift of discernment for a reason. Let's use it for the stuff and remove what we deemed as being unhealthy. So, all right.
Cool.
Let's shift to the next one. I know it might seem a little bit funny, but dancing. Is dancing considered sinful?
Ah,
It is when I do it.
I think this is kind of carries over from the last one of having discernment. I don't know of a single time. Well, I guess I can't say that. Mm-hmm. There are certain times that when dancing is taken too far with people's intent behind the dances, it becomes a problem. But if you're just going out and you're having a good time and you're dancing around, like there's nothing wrong with dancing.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with the floss,
Yeah. I don't think because
does anybody else know what the floss is?
yes,
here?
I know what the floss is.
Okay, well, you know, I got a lot of blank stares.
You go around flossing a lot.
Hey, I can floss. I can floss. I can move
Hey,
sporadically.
I would agree with what you just said, Tristan. Like, it depends on the motivations behind it. Like, obviously, a stripper dancing is going to be sinful because their intent is to make you fall into lust.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that is going to be different than, I'll throw out an example. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14 talks about when David was dancing before the Lord with all his might. He was dancing because he was just extremely happy and he was worshiping God. And he was just, I can just imagine it being just awful dancing, but like he's just whatever movement pops into his head and he's just celebrating and worshiping God. That right there is not sinful. That's coming straight from Scripture. But then you got on the complete flip side of it, somebody who's dancing with the intent of making somebody fall into sin. That would be sinful. And I think that's where I think some of the secular world tries to kind of poke fun at the religious side because they think that there are people that do think that all dancing's sinful.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single denomination that declares that dancing itself is sinful. Have you heard of anything like that?
Just in Footloose.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Movies.
There's nothing wrong with old Willard's moves.
But
See? It's all good.
Dancing.
She threw me off. Sorry.
All right. You pick up that thought, but I like to dance, and I like to dance with my wife. My wife doesn't like to dance, but if we go to a wedding, I'm tearing up dance floor.
Yeah.
If I'm dancing by myself, and usually it's fun, and everybody gets enjoyment, and we're just kind of having fun, fun our arms and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
But then there's always, guys that are dancing up on girls and stuff. And it's hey.
It's the intent behind the dance.
It's all right, we could live without that.
One of my
bumping
favorite.
and grinding, and that's when it starts.
That goes back to the when other people are around kind of thing, having that judgment of, hey, this is kind of a problem, or I don't want my kids over here that are at a wedding watching grown people do this. So.
Yeah.
Now, this might be, it's not really a tangent, but it's kind of out in left field. What if you were just talking about how you dance with your wife? What if you start to get a little bit more risque with your dancing, but it's just you're dancing with each other at home and you're alone? And I would say that's not exactly. If you're home,
alone at home,
and I would say the intent behind it obviously is leading toward something more sexual, but it's between you and your wife.
It is.
It's private. It's personal. I would say that's not sinful.
Nobody else is around.
Exactly.
You're not creating a show.
Yeah. You're not out in the middle of a wedding reception grinding up on each other. Yeah, I would say that is perfectly fine, even though the intent behind it is to be more sexual in nature. It's between you and your spouse. And you're supposed to celebrate that. Sex is a gift that God gave us as married people. We're supposed to enjoy it. I think that falls under that category.
Dancing could be part of the enjoyment.
Yeah. So I think So it goes back to intent, and we'll say location.
Yeah.
Whether it's and you're enjoying it for personal or private reasons, and there's some caveats that fall in there, but dancing itself is perfectly fine.
Yeah, grab both my kids and my wife and dance in the kitchen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite moments. Is my daughter was at a wedding and she was singing "Let It Go." You probably remember that.
I do remember it.
And she was dancing like crazy, and it was hilarious. And it was fun. She was having a blast. And
then I would say one more thing too, you and your spouse. I would say that's showing. Obviously, you're showing affection toward each other when you're dancing with, you're loving up on each other. You dance. You're setting an example for your children, right? I'm not saying.
So no, I've
no,
actually
I'm
heard
not.
this.
You just gave me a really dirty look.
face right
I'm
now.
not saying
It's like, what are you talking about here?
No, like,
What example are we setting?
Have you ever walked up to your wife and just started dancing with her in the kitchen in front of your kids?
Showing
I
that
see what you're
loving
saying.
kind of
I see what
attitude
you're
of care.
Yeah, you're caring. It's
respect
not.
for-
I'm not trying to be like
Right, you're not trying to. Yeah.
physical here.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, you ever just walk up and start dancing with your wife in the kitchen? Your kids are around.
raw.
Yeah.
I think you're setting an example for your kids doing that. Like,
We're in it now, buddy.
I would. Would you rather your kids see you, being affectionate toward each
Affectionate
other,
marriage
or arguing
and-
with each other?
Absolutely.
So
It's okay if your kids see kids.
Yeah.
on the family.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Focus on the Family talks about that. They had a whole segment on it one day.
Yeah.
It's big, for your kids to know what a loving relationship looks
Exactly. And
Right.
like.
so, all right. We're going to shift out of that.
Moving on.
All
Out of that category really quick.
dancing, bad and good, know the difference.
Yeah.
All right. Recreational drugs.
Yeah.
What do you mean by
it-
recreational?
Exactly what recreational. You were doing it.
Not for medical use.
Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Because that's where I would draw the line.
So just for fun?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
probably
kind
a
of what
problem.
recreational means there.
Well, I'm just wondering.
Yeah. He's just clarifying.
Yeah.
No, I feel strongly on this. I think it alters your brain.
Yes.
It alters your train of thought. It alters what you're thinking. And God created your mind to think perfectly, and you're just messing with it.
So I think it goes back to that lack of self-control. Like with drinking, I mean, when you get drunk or you get high when you're smoking something or you're doing some other narcotic of some sort, and you're out of your own mind.
Yes.
Yep.
You're not honoring God through that.
It's easy to be manipulated there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That kind of goes with hand in hand with drunkenness. Like you get to a certain state of mind, then you can be manipulated. You can be tempted. There's a lot of stuff that can happen when you're not of sound body and mind.
Yeah. I mean, it also says to take care of your body. Yeah. Your body's a
Temple.
Temple. Yeah.
Yep. Those are the
temple.
You guys hit the two pieces of scripture that I pulled actually. So 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20 talks about how our bodies are temples for the Holy Spirit, and we shouldn't desecrate that temple. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." So that's exactly what we were just saying, how you're not of sound body and mind. You can fall easily into temptation. That's that devil looking for that person to devour.
And have you guys ever been around somebody that's like extremely inebriated?
That's annoying.
It can get a little rough. Just trying to talk to them. And I don't know if you ever tried to talk God to somebody in that state, but
It's a nightmare.
you can tell you're not there.
I don't think you can
You're
because
home.
they're not in a good mindset.
Yeah.
Like they can't think.
But I mean, it's
With-
borderline possession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because if anybody's ever been to that point of being drunk or high or whatever, I don't know, but everything seems different than when you're sober and you're around those people that are experiencing that, right? I'll admit it. When I was younger, I drank, I would say, to excess. Being young in the military, and it's just again part of the culture. So you kind of just do it. At the time when you're doing it, you're like, oh, it's just having fun, enjoying it, whatever. But then when you're sober and you're around those same people, gosh, these guys are just annoying, right? And that's how people think about you when you're doing it. You're not in that right mindset. And then you just brought up, what if you're trying to, talk to somebody about God and they're in that mindset, they can't think logically. They can't think coherently enough to even broach the subject. So I would say recreational, yes, definitely a sin.
Okay.
Medicinal, on the other hand,
Okay.
that's where I would draw the line.
But there's a line within that line.
Don't overuse the medicinal, like the intent behind using that.
That falls under recreational. But the medicinal marijuana movement, I don't like it.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. And I think that falls under one of those like personal conviction things. I think, and again, full disclosure, I've never done any kind of marijuana whatsoever. So I can't attest to the mindset that it puts you in. But going off of some of the studies that I've read or whatever, they talk about how, it can help you with like insomnia or anxiety or whatever. It depends. Pain management. With it being more of a naturally occurring substance, whereas there's so much stigma attached to that, but we're okay with putting narcotic pills into our body to kill pain.
Yeah.
That's chemically made in a lab.
I don't know. If I'm feeling sore, I just eat cumin pills.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I think being
there's a difference. So I've been around pot a lot more than I've ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I just don't like.
And that's
I've seen a lot of people close to me, and it's just it's like it's not worth it. It just.
I've seen
and that's the first thing everybody says is, well, the health benefits.
I think it can be damaging to your if you're smoking it,
I can't
think
function
you're
without it. Well, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't you?
I don't think that's a medicinal property at that point.
Masking with this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a medicinal property at that point.
Yeah.
But I've seen and I've heard of a lot of people like in the military community who have come back from deployments, and they've severely affected mentally, where that's helped them in their mindset. And
there's a place for it.
Yeah,
I mean, here I am contradicting myself. I've seen that, and I've seen cerebral palsy.
Yes, and I think I've actually seen it with Parkinson's too.
That's what I was going to say.
But then kind of going back to the 1 Corinthians verse where it talks about our body's a temple.
Yeah.
Are we willing to desecrate it by, smoking it, possibly harming your lung? I don't know all the science behind that.
Turn yourself into a vegetable for a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, could you, I know they've come a long way with like edible type stuff. Again, I'm not too educated on all that stuff.
There's CBD.
Yeah. There's CBD oils and stuff that's more natural.
Properties without the side effects.
Exactly.
Whatever.
So I think on a medicinal level, and I think even then, like you just said, there's some lines to that.
Yeah.
Then I'd say it's okay. That's one of those things you got to pray and ask for discernment. And if you feel convicted in any way, shape, or form, then I would say avoid it.
Well,
absolutely.
But recreational is no go.
Is a no.
Yeah. I don't know. I went to Denver for the National Western Stock Show.
That's why you went to Denver.
And it's just like you go around the city and where you go to eat somewhere or something. It's just like there's just a different aura about it.
It's crazy.
And
that's why it's called Mile High.
Yeah. Well, and in my mind, and we'll probably lose a listener over this, but like those states have fallen in my mind that have just opened up, marijuana for conventional use.
Well,
it's like you've fallen, like the devil's won that. There's people there that are fine, but like as the government officials governing that piece of God's creation, they've fallen.
Yeah, I went to Vegas a month ago, 2 months ago, and like weed is legal down there, and you could not walk anywhere in that dang state almost without smelling it.
Yeah,
it was horrible. It was ridiculous.
I would have to look up the stat, but I'm pretty sure we're at that point now to where there's more states that have it legalized in some way, shape, or form than that don't have it legalized. Yeah. And just like we love going to Nashville, right? I mean, we love country music. That's one of my favorite things now is just to be able to go find like a restaurant or, like you said, a bar or whatever, just finding a table and just sitting there for a few hours and just listening to live music. I love it, but it's legal down there. And like you said, like it's weird coming from a place that doesn't allow it to somewhere that openly allows it. And
and
you go across the border into Michigan.
I could be completely wrong in everything I think about it, and that's fine.
And exactly, I mean, that's your opinion. That's what the conclusion you've come to based on your convictions.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfectly fine. Like, I think it's definitely better to err on the side of not doing it than it is doing it. You know, but that's one of those things you got to use discernment,
especially if you're questioning it. Yeah.
And I think there's might be a reason why you're questioning it too.
Your comment about Michigan, I delivered 2 bulls up there last weekend. And like as soon as you hit the state line.
Oh yeah.
Dispensary.
Everywhere. It's legal up there.
Yep.
Yeah. What it does to a community.
Yeah.
And it just drives me nuts.
So
whatever.
Recreational, no go. Medicinal, I think the general consensus is it depends.
Yeah.
There's some lines. You got to be careful.
It just like drinking. Don't abuse.
Tattoos and piercings. Tattoos and piercings, are they sinful?
I have one. I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
But it's a Bible verse.
You wish you didn't because it's a tattoo, or you just?
Yeah, I don't know. I had a verse. Me and my best friend have the same tattoo, same verse, Proverbs 28:1. But I don't know. I guess I don't know the deals on that biblically, but it's like
a lot of people like to point.
Wish I didn't permanently mark up my body because God does it perfectly, and now I've just took matters in my own hands and kind of fouled it up.
A lot of people point to Leviticus as the reasons for it being, a sin. And if you look into it, it's more discussing about how the tattoos that people were putting on their bodies were for other like pagan religion or pagan gods. They weren't to glorify God, or they were overtly going against God, I guess. So that's what it's talking about, like in Leviticus when it says, you shouldn't get tattooed or you shouldn't mark up your body or whatever. Mm-hmm. This is just my, my own personal conviction. I do not think that tattoos are inherently sinful. I think it all depends on the content of whatever you're getting. If you're getting a bunch of demonic stuff on your body, then yes, of course that's sinful, and you're gonna have to, answer for that.
Oh, I just had a bing, but
a little light bulb moment.
I got a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
I'm sitting on it.
No,
but
before you get down your rabbit hole, I want to address this one because, for me, growing up, my parents, and this is where it's going to get touchy for some people, but your tattoo may be a Bible verse, or it might be something that's okay, as far as what we would say is sinful or not sinful. But when I was growing up, my grandparents, my parents were totally against tattoos. I would have had to dishonor them in order to get a tattoo. Mm-hmm. So the intent for me to get a tattoo, which I was against them too, so it wasn't a hard thing. But if the intent behind it is like, I don't care what my mom and dad say, that made the top 5. I always point that out in the 10 Commandments. You're supposed to honor your mother and father. And I'm not saying this for the benefit of Tristan. I'm saying it because that's something I had to do with many things that I may not agree with my parents on, or even my in-laws. An example would be cremation of my wife. I think there's nothing wrong with cremation. It was a pagan tradition. So I asked my father-in-law, I said, how do you feel about this? And he, he's kind of back and forth. It's his daughter, it's my wife. And then he hands me a book later about how it was used in pagan tradition. So I got the hint that he's not really for it. So out of honor for him, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bury her the way we were going to originally, but cremation was something we were thinking about. Mm-hmm. So the same thing with tattoos or anything you can look at. If it dishonors your parents, you have to ask yourself, is it worth doing one of the things that God put on his 10 Commandments? I mean, seriously, you should avoid those things. Now, if you got a family that grows up that's like, hey, it's no big deal. If that's where you're at, then you get a Bible verse on you, and that's between you and your family. You didn't dishonor your family.
So my older sister got a tattoo as kind of like a rebellion thing.
Yeah.
But then I saw my parents' reactions and their ultimate acceptance.
Okay.
So
yeah.
looking back, they probably could have been a little tougher on her, and I probably wouldn't have one. You know what I mean?
Right.
But and I was going to a bunch of football camps and seeing guys that just were covered. So it's kind of like a fit in thing.
Yeah.
They're always like, "Hey, you ain't got no ink." It's like, well,
If it's an act of defiance, I mean,
Yeah.
you got to
Yeah.
ask yourself where you stand on that. So,
yeah.
But I would say the act, it's in and of itself, isn't necessarily sinful. Like, and I think it goes along with the lines of some of the other stuff we talked about. It's got to be, your motivations and the intentions behind it.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, you brought up a good point with honoring your parents. Then, like in my mind, I don't know if it's me being defensive or if it's me feeling like a conviction or come on. Like, what if your parents, even though you're honoring them, what if they're not coming from a good place or a good point of view? Because I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about
That was my
tattoos
first
at the
thought,
point.
too.
Like, I'm not necessarily even just talk about tattoos. Like, what if we bring up some other activities or controversial topics? In the way, I mean, just throwing it out there. I'm not accusing anybody of having but like we talk about our grandparents or our great grandparents, where they came from a different time where race was looked at a lot more serious than it is now.
Okay.
I would say. What if they are instilling in you some thoughts about a particular race? Would going against that be dishonoring your mother and your father?
Okay. Go ahead.
I think on that stuff, you're walking a fine line on trying to, because what you're trying to do in life is live in peace with everyone. Mm-hmm. If what you do in life causes tension and it's stirring everything up, and you're going to have to live outside of your family, and that's a huge decision that you're making. I think that needs to be taken into consideration. You know what I mean? I know, because I had a grandfather who was very, very racist. We'll just say it straight out. So, and there's a part that's like, how would I do this and not dishonor him and end up with a huge family fight? And some people will just die on, I'm not doing that, because that, there's 8.2 billion people. Mm-hmm. I'm in the mindset of, unless you have, I think you should try to keep your families together. That's where I'm at. So I feel like there's a way to work around it. And it's tough because we live in a world now that's, I see nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be a whole family fight where it causes all these problems, then there's a dynamic there that you really got to consider.
Yeah, like keeping the family together for the sake of keeping the family together, but at the expense of your morals.
Yeah.
Your beliefs. So like, I'm not estranged from my parents, but pretty close.
Yeah.
My relationship is very strained with both of my parents.
Sure.
And it's easier because I have my own family.
Right.
Because in my mind, and I've been coached through this, by different pastors and stuff, my sole responsibility is my family, my wife and my children.
Sure.
So, you honor your parents, but at the same time, you don't let them mess with your foundation of the family you've made. Is kind of what I've been taught.
Right.
And what it's come down to is setting boundaries and figuring out how we can honor them from a distance that's not going to hurt anybody. But that's a loaded topic, and it's hard to navigate that.
Yeah.
But I think there is a point in time where there can be situations where it's like, okay, I'm trying to follow God's path and I'm being pulled from it constantly, and consistently or ridiculed about it.
Sure.
Or, I think that's a point where it's like, all right, you can still honor them by having distance. You don't have to like
Yeah.
say F you and da 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 da.
Right.
And, you can just say, hey, I love you, but I need to set a boundary from you for a while until we can revisit this topic in an amicable manner.
Because ultimately, we all serve God first.
Yeah.
So if what you're doing, if your parents are drawing you away from serving God, then you need to serve God first.
Yeah.
But he's never going to tell you to curse your parents.
Right.
He's never going to tell you not to show love to them or forgiveness, because he's going to tell you to show forgiveness to everyone.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a point there where you may have to distance yourself,
Right.
but you still bring honor to them. And when they come around someday and they see that they weren't right, there's a peace and there's an ability to make that right. Does that make sense? I guess a little bit.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's still the fifth commandment. It's still one he's wanting you to do, and no matter where, it's kind of like it's my wife or kids or whoever. When I'm talking to them, I'm like, if I'm not the perfect dad or the perfect husband, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to be bad too. You know what I mean? So you can't go, well, dad was a terrible dad, so that's why I'm a terrible person too, or I'm not going to be a good wife because my husband's terrible. And that's not how God says it.
Right.
He says, you be honorable to me.
Answer evil with kindness.
That's right. Not evil with evil.
The fifth commandment is honor your father and mother, but the first three are all about honoring God.
Right.
Yeah.
And those come first.
Yeah.
And if you're I guess you said it earlier, but I kind of already had this in my mind that if your parents are pulling you astray from what God says, then it's not dishonoring them. It is in their mind, but it's not in God's. It might be, hey, I'm going to do my own thing,
right,
but it's going to be according to what God says, not according to what you say. And in their mind, it will be dishonoring them, but it's not going to be in God's mind.
Well, I think where this pertains to our question is, everybody's brought up differently, and there can be some, you can get tattoos and piercings or whatever because that's what you thought was okay because that's where you're raised. It's kind of a you don't know what you don't know situation.
Yeah.
Like there's guys with satanic tattoos all over them that are big believers. But there's repentance. Now I'd say if you are a believer and you're saying, well, I'm going to stick a bone through my nose and put a picture of Chris Rock on my chest, probably shouldn't do that,
Yeah.
So try to steer the shit back.
No, you're good. Some
center
interesting takes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you've seen that. I don't know. I've seen it. So this is my rabbit hole, and this goes back to our secular movies. So, some of my family watches
5 questions ago.
Right. Yeah. Hey, it all works in. So some of my family
This is a
watches
podcast.
The Righteous Gemstones. So if you've seen The Righteous Gemstones, don't. It's bad. Like it is blasphemous. But they sent me this thing, and one of the main characters in the show has just a bunch of satanic tattoos, but he's a believer. And I was like, oh, well, that's good because, it shows that he can be a believer still. And then I started watching it, and I was like, I don't need to watch this anymore. So it's kind of like catch-22.
yeah.
It's like there's a good nugget, but the whole picture is just, not a good show.
Well,
but the show kind of makes me mad because it's just downright making fun of him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just downright making fun of God, right in his face with everybody.
Yeah.
And it's popular. And, some of my family are devout Catholics, and they just love the show. And I'm just like, give me a freaking break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Luke's dad deals with
No names.
many people in prison and that kind of thing, and they have tattoos all over him.
Yeah.
And he was telling a story about how he went to a church once, and there was a guy, really big dude, who had tattoos all over him, and he was a door greeter. And he was talking about, his first thought was, he looks like he had just gotten out of prison. Well, funny story was, he actually had. Like, he had just gotten out of prison, and that church was like we're not ashamed of you. You know, he had repented. He had completely changed his life. He had come to Jesus. He had, flipped all of his beliefs and things around. He can't get rid of everything that's on his body, but he knows that through Christ he's saved. And he was just like, that's amazing that they're putting him at the door.
Yeah.
He has a door greeter. That's incredible.
Yep.
So
not about where you.
know where you were at, it's where you are.
Yeah.
So tattoos, a lot of different takes on that one, but I would say
Form your opinion based off of what we
the
should
act
do.
of getting a tattoo, if it's to go against what God says or go against God himself, that's sinful. If you're paying homage to other gods, quote unquote gods, then yes, I would say that's sinful. The act of getting a tattoo, like if you're getting your mom's name put, or heart or something like that, and you got your kids' names on it, I don't think that it is, but I think you have to listen to your convictions and your discernment, and there's some other things that may come into play, but I think that's gonna end up being a personal choice.
I would agree. Yeah.
So
I think that's well said.
this should be a short answer here. Premarital sex. Is this?
Yes. That was pretty easy.
Sex outside of marriage is a sin. Sex is intended to be enjoyed between a husband and wife. The Bible actually talks about when you have sex with somebody, you are actually joined with them. Even like if it's just like a one night stand, you are joined with them for eternity. So there are instances in the Bible of sex outside of marriage, but they always call, because of that bond, and you're spiritually joined together, it calls for you to essentially to marry the person, right?
Still doesn't make it.
It doesn't make it right.
Yeah, it still makes it.
But because that bond is already there, they say it's better to marry the person than it is to just go about your way.
Yeah.
So yes, premarital sex or sex outside of marriage is a sin. So
And that's so normalized today. That's the worst part about it.
Yeah.
It's just
It's very unfortunate because almost everybody in my friend group, and I got a pretty good sized friend group. Every single one of them is either living together or sleeping together, or both. I mean, it's like Kaylee and I are the only two people in our entire friend group that are living how we should be.
yeah,
And it's sad because those were all my friends from like years. I've known them for years, and for them to just be like, oh yeah, whatever.
yeah. And unfortunately, that's the culture that is sprouting up recently within the last. Well, I would say
10.
sex outside of marriage has been around for a long time, but
Yeah.
for being as promiscuous as it is nowadays, it's probably the last 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, I'd say
how
like
normalized it is.
rated as pushed as
Trying to get your body count up as high as it can. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
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 Sounds like something the Bible mentions about the last days.
Like Sodom and Gomorrah.
I mean,
Yeah,
when it
but-
becomes normalized to the point of where you just don't think about it
Yeah.
anymore, and your conscience isn't even, you've seared it.
Yeah.
It's getting pretty rough.
So
Bad these last 20 years.
Yeah, but the 60s was no better.
Yeah.
Or the 70s. Wasn't the 70s when they were doing like,
60s and
hippie
70s.
you ever seen that 70s show? They have a key party.
No, I've never seen.
You never seen that 70s show?
No.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was when they were doing all the crazy parties and stuff. It's like, it's
This isn't something new. This
It's just in our face. I feel like
Yeah.
more now.
I mean, I think the time of the flood, that was all going on, so it wiped out the whole earth
Yeah.
because of it. Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't think that was the only city that was wiped out. This has been a common problem with humanity for a long, long time.
Years.
But it's not acceptable.
We bring up Sodom and Gomorrah a lot as an example, but I think it's important to realize that when we talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, it's not just, there's a couple sinful activities happen, or there's a few people or whatever, like the entire city
every
was
single
living
person.
in debauchery and sin. Like
Vegas.
they even said,
Literally, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I believe when Abraham was saying, if you can find one righteous person, that he would spare the city.
Yeah.
And essentially couldn't find one righteous person. He was able to get his cousin, I believe Lot was his cousin. Yeah. They were able to get him out of the city, but everybody else was unrighteous to the point where it was deserving of God's wrath. And it's not just, oh, I've sinned a few times. It was, you were living in complete debauchery.
Blasphemous.
Yes.
And
Well, one other thing where like they were doing a lot of different things, like angels and
yeah.
there's something about angels procreating with people.
That was before the flood, right?
That was prior to the flood.
Prior to the flood.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
But you're right. The same thing was going on there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he just wiped it out.
Yeah.
And something, we keep talking about this, but you're supposed to be spilt. We talk about the body being the temple, being filled with the Spirit. Everyone thinks that their life is their own. But here's the truth. The truth is your life came from God.
Yep.
And he controls every bit of it. You don't get to decide anything really, other than whether you're going to follow him or not. And so when people think, "Well, this is my life," you didn't bring your life forward, and you don't get to determine where it goes except through accepting Christ. So your path is to make your body a temple so God can live within you. So you should be trying to find the ways to not be like Sodom and Gomorrah, and going away from those ways of being, so that God can live in you and you can be the temple you were created to be for him. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Fair.
I believe so.
I like it.
All right. So we'll parallel that. Living with someone before marriage. So you are romantically involved with somebody, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever it is. Living with someone prior to being married, is that sin?
The act of just living with somebody? No. Well, here's the other part of living with somebody. What bed are you sleeping in?
Fair.
You know what I'm saying?
Fair.
So if you're sleeping in separate beds, and like there's roommates.
Yeah.
People have roommates all the time. Not a problem. But when it gets to a point where you are romantically or sexually involved with...
I think that's the line right there.
Yeah.
To me, that's the line.
Yes, I agree. I think that when it gets to that point...
you move your girlfriend into your house. And
Exactly.
You guys sleep in this closet.
Exactly. Here's the other part of it.
Hold on. I wouldn't even say the separate bed part, but this is just me personally. But you are opening yourself up to temptation.
No,
Hey, have you ever seen The Ugly Dachshund? That movie's made in the 50s. Married couple slept in separate beds. Hey, just saying.
I don't know.
Hold on. The other part of this is because I got married like a year ago,
Yeah.
and this was a big thing when Kaylee and I were first getting our apartment, because like I was like, I'm ready. I wanted all these things to just start happening. I wanted her to move in and all this kind of stuff, and we were not having sex at the time. We were totally fine. Like even at my wedding, like Bill made that very clear. Like I was ready for that, and so like everybody, I wanted her to move in.
Now the whole world knows.
Yeah. And I wanted her to move in, and it was like, well, I'm not going to be sleeping with her, but the image that gave everybody else was, oh, they're sleeping together, or oh, they're not waiting till marriage, when that's what God says. Like that goes back to what we were talking about way earlier in this, like an hour ago, about
Bill.
Yeah.
Perceptions of other people.
About other people.
Standards that people put.
About being an example in other people's lives. And when you administer to everybody else, hey, this isn't right, and then you go and do it, your witness goes away.
That's a very good point.
So that was the other part I was going to get to about living with somebody before you're married, when you're romantically involved. Roommates, like I brought that up as like people live together. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're romantically involved with that person, everybody and their brother is going to think that you're sleeping together, which most of the time you are, as sad as it is. Like people just don't live together anymore. I don't even know I can't even say anymore. People don't normally live together.
And
and not be romantically involved.
Here's the whole thing about it. You are the minority.
Unfortunately, yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have zero room to even comment on this topic. Like,
But our goal is as Christians isn't to worry about some of those things. It's to bring people into the true belief. So here we want to tell them, it's whatever you did in your past, you can change it today.
Yeah.
oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, I don't care if you're living with somebody or you're doing whatever. Or no matter what you've done, I mean, Christ died for your sins. You can accept him today, and you walk away from those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait. I mean, there's easy ways to get married. If you feel convicted, it's not like it's a major issue. You can get married quickly if you're involved
Yeah. Well,
But the point that Tristan made, your grandfather, my father-in-law, that's the first thing he said was because there was a couple that was.
Did he say that?
Living that? Yeah, an older couple that was living. And he's like,
that.
but that gives you if you're witnessing to people, you're supposed to be credible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be living righteous so that people will listen to you and say, yeah, he's falling the right way.
And I didn't take that as seriously when it was that time of me getting married and that whole time. It was literally 3 weeks before we were getting, or a month before we were getting married, when I got the apartment.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, why don't you come move in? And then 6 to 8 months after we had been married, it was like, oh, wow. Now I'm seeing all of my friends move in together, and I'm consciously thinking I know that some of these people are Christians. There's a pastor's daughter that I'm really good friends with that moved in with her boyfriend, and I'm just like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything about it at the time when I was like, oh, you're moving in together. Well, that's great, or I really wanted to. But then after you get through that whole point and you get the 2020 of that was a great idea that I didn't move in before.
See, I'm glad you brought that up because when I was thinking about this, I was just focusing on my mindset was just the act itself, not other people's perception of what was going on. And I think physically, I think that somebody can live with another person, not as long as that relationship isn't becoming sexual in nature. You can still be romantically involved with somebody, but as long as you're not fooling around or having sex or anything, I think that I had the mindset of, oh, that's not sinful because, you are sharing a domicile. Yeah, you might be sleeping in the same bed, but there's nothing in the Bible that says don't sleep in the same bed.
There's nothing dishonoring God.
But you're opening yourself up to temptation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we are not known for being able to withstand temptation very well, especially in sexual nature. So very rarely does that occur. So I had the mindset of, the act of living with somebody isn't inherently sinful, but are you crossing that line or not? But I'm glad you brought up the perception argument because especially if you're trying to talk to other people about God, what
It was just
the way they're perceiving you and your
Yeah.
relationship is big. So
I mean, it was a big thing for me. I mean, I got married at 20, and everybody I know is 21, 22, 23, all living together. They're not getting married. It was well, I want to move in before I get married, kind of thing. And then it was let's back up and think about this for a second.
Glad you didn't.
I am. I'm very glad that I didn't because now I can be well, Kaylee and I, never lived together. We never had sex together. It was this is what we did because this was what God said.
Well, that goes back to good parents.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I always told him, look to Jesus. I said, don't look to Dad. I try to do the best I can, but I fail. And he's seen it. So it's you gotta read your Bible and know what he says, because my rewards in heaven, I don't know what they'll be. It might just be here, you can come in,
Yeah, it might be hey, we need a ditch digger.
I mean,
you got in the
that's where I'm at.
gate. You got in the gates. That's about
right.
it.
So I don't worry. It's don't worry about your dad, what he's doing. Look at what you're doing, and then work from there. Because you know what Jesus wants if you're reading your Bible. And
I feel like this needs to be said because it is so prominent and prevalent anymore. It's not eternal damnation if you've fallen.
No, there is forgiveness.
None of this is going to hell.
And say, spoiler alert, no sin on this list, or even the sins that aren't on this list,
Yeah.
are going to cause you to lose yourself, lose your salvation,
Yep.
or to not be able to earn forgiveness from God through repentance. Not a single sin on this list.
Yeah.
But
Everybody's judged separately, though.
But one thing I will say is that if you're convicted and you choose to harden your heart against God, you don't. I'll say this because I know that it's said on Ray Comfort, there's 150,000 people that die every day. They're not all old. You don't know what day you're coming.
Nope.
You don't know what day, you don't know your last breath. So if you're convicted and you're like, I need to stop doing this, but you say, but I really like it. You know, I don't care if it's music. I don't care if it's living with your spouse. I don't care if it's your lifestyle, whatever it is that you're doing that you know is wrong, and you continue to do it in defiance, knowing that it's against God, you are in danger. I don't want to make that. I think everybody should know God struck down Aaron's son, right? In the Holy of Holies. And he's a high priest because he did not
do the burnt offering correctly.
This is a God that demands that you honor him.
Yeah. Demands perfection.
Mm-hmm. So if you are not covered by Christ and you're not trying to live for him, you should be in fear, because if you read the Old Testament, you're going to find out that God's got a wrath, and it's an eternal wrath, and he rules over heaven and hell.
Yeah.
You think Satan doesn't rule over hell.
He only does because God allows him to.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into hell. Satan gets cast in. God's over all of it, everything you see. So I just say, if you get convicted, you need to really, really adjust your heart and don't harden yourself against him. Come into repentance and then start living for him. It's a lot better to wake up every day and go, how's it going, God, than running from him.
Yep. And, you know, the righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up again.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you won't fall.
Yeah. Stay in prayer and repent, you know.
Absolutely.
I gave for some reason they invited me to speak in front of the church. And, you know, when, you know, I take communion, I think I said this on the last podcast I was on, so, you know, here you go. But, when I take communion, it's almost like getting called down to the office. All the bad things you've done start running through your mind as you're walking down, because it's like, oh, what happened? You know, like, what did I get caught doing? You know, it's important. I like that we do communion every week. So it's like, all right, let's wipe it clean and just try to do better next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So we got like 6 or 7 more to go over. So let's knock these out. This is going to be a hot take, I think, and it's a big enough question that we're actually going to have a whole episode devoted to just this topic. Divorce and remarriage. Is that a sin? Yo.
According to the Bible.
Okay, we're good on this one. So I've been asked this question by a German Baptist gentleman I spent some time with. So there's more to it, because marriage, by our standard, is a legal agreement that's nothing more than a contract within our government. That's how we see it. Like, that's how the United States of America sees it. Lawyers break contracts. Okay? So you have that. Then you have the covenant of marriage.
Okay.
So I think the covenant of marriage, that's a spiritual binding contract with God. That's big deal. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a big deal. You break that.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, you get married and you say, "So help me God." But like, there are marriages that happen on the other side of the table where they don't believe in God, they don't like God, they don't want any of that. And it's like, well, spiritually, I wouldn't even consider that a marriage.
See, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
And here's how I would unpack it. And this is going off of what Jesus talked about. And if you look through the Gospels, try to see if I have the exact one. I think it's in Matthew when he's talking about marriage. He's not distinguishing between, Gentile and Jew marriage. He's not distinguishing between religious and non-religious marriage. He's talking about marriage in general. And I think a lot of times, especially if we're, coming from the Christian perspective, you are getting married in the eyes of God. Even if you aren't religious, you are entering a commitment with each other. And the way that God looks at marriage is for forever. There is one instance, Moses the laws of Moses kind of talk about different ways or different reasons for divorce or terminating marriage. But when Jesus talked about it in Matthew, and he basically brought up that there's one legitimate reason for divorce, and it would be sexual immorality. So adultery or any other category that falls under sexual immorality would be the only grounds for divorce in the eyes of God. And even then, it shouldn't be the very first action that's taken. Like, you should try to seek reconciliation if possible.
And that's tough.
Yeah.
To even think about that's tough.
And
because everyone always thinks, well, if my spouse did this, you know what? I don't know if I could hold it together. But at the same time, you're going to go do all these things. And if you think about all the secret sins you've been doing throughout your life, and maybe you're not doing them now, but maybe you haven't told everybody, you're going to stand in front of God who gave you life and say, please forgive me.
Yep.
And you're going to want that. You're going to want it real, real bad. So if you have a spouse that's, willing to reconcile, legitimately, you got to really think about that on the way you forgive.
Yeah.
So it gets real tough. I understand that. I've had those same thoughts myself. I think everybody who's married probably like, I don't know if I can handle that. But
and that's just my simple human brain and the way that I perceived it, and the way I using my discernment, the way I took it. But
I think there is one other one, like the believer who's married to a non-believer, if they won't stay.
We're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah,
but
if they won't stay, then that's different. But if they will stay, then they're supposed to stay married too.
Yeah.
So
anything else as far as that goes? So
I don't know how much time we got, Brad. You put too many questions on here again.
I know. But I would say, yes, it is a sin.
Yeah.
Even according to Jesus, divorce. And then if you were to divorce and remarry before one of the spouses died, then he considers that adultery. Again,
even
go ahead.
Any this other than sexual immorality, it's adultery.
So if somebody just gets tired of being married and they want a divorce,
well, yeah, obviously,
yeah.
but
if
I'm trying to think of the way that it's worded exactly.
I'd have to, every night. We're not telling you to stay with him.
I'd have to look up the exact verse, but it talks about if a man, I believe, if a man and a woman remarry after divorce, like different people after divorce, then that's considered adultery. I would have to look up the exact verse in Matthew. Can't remember if they were talking about if it's for one of the reasons outside of sexual immorality. That very well could be. So if it's a legitimate grounds for divorce in the eyes of God, then I don't see that as adultery. I wouldn't assume. Again, this is my own simple human mind.
Yeah, this is the 7%.
I can't claim to know the mindset of God, but I'm just going off of how I've read. But
good point.
Yeah,
Jim's a lot better with his words than I am. Not you, Brad.
And we do. I do acknowledge that there are Christians that have been divorced. They have remarried, and they have very loving, healthy family and relationships right now. I do get that, but we're just talking about the act of divorce.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about on every podcast episode, there's nothing that you can do if you seek forgiveness from God, there's nothing you can do outside of blaspheming the Holy Spirit that will keep you from getting forgiveness.
Yeah.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
The other side of that being the person who, isn't tired of being married, who doesn't want to get divorced, who did nothing wrong, but still gets divorced because the other person wanted to get divorced. What happens to that person? Because that person's not at fault. Yeah. So does that person have to not remarry? And
that would be the same as a non-believer leaving. They broke the bond. The bond's been broken. And so they're free of that bond.
And I think it also depends on too, if that other person is leaving and they're seeking out relationship with somebody else because of that, or as maybe that's the reason for them leaving, or they left and then they found somebody else. Well, that right there falls under the category of sexual immorality.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
No, that's a good question. There's a lot to think about. I think there's a lot of little caveats that can fall under that category.
Oh, and I think today there's just so many different avenues of thought.
Yeah.
Well, hear that little
surrounding it. That's why for me it's like if you know that you're performing a covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love where you're going.
I feel like that holds a lot more weight
Yeah.
than marrying the bartender in Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you say that about the covenant, that's what I know we're running short on time, but when you say that about the covenant, if that is what you hold at the highest beyond anything that your husband or wife has done, and you're like, man, I made this to God.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about God in that way, it's going to help you through pretty much any of your situations to reconcile, to make things right. Now, if you have somebody who I mean, you have to remember, God is understanding. He's going to allow that to go. Now, there's going to be people that argue with me on that because they're going to argue with a lot of this stuff I've heard people say you should never remarry again because that's what it says, and it's adultery. It's continuous adultery. I don't believe that myself. I don't believe it's continuous adultery. I think it's just like any adultery that you commit. You both can come to belief. You can both come to Christ, and you can both have his blood covering your sins. So
absolutely,
it gets to be real tough. So I'll say to anyone else, it's like starting out life. You can make it real messy, or you can keep it real clean. So keep it real clean. And I would say that any divorce that happens because two sides. Someone's not, it's always like, well, that's their fault. No, you probably weren't there. You probably didn't stay home with your spouse and do things. You probably weren't paying attention.
There's a reason.
There's a reason that they grew apart from you because they loved you at one time to take that vow before God. And then it's always, every time I hear that, I'm like, wait a minute, I know the other side of this story.
Oh,
it's like,
well, and I've seen it.
Not saying that's every time.
I mean, my dad's on his fourth wife.
Yeah, I would argue.
I've seen good and bad relationships.
I would argue also there's such a unwillingness to actually fight for whatever's
fight for marriage.
We're so quick to give up on marriage in today's day and age. There's a reason why over 50% of marriages
that's not a performance of the covenant.
It's not, but I mean, there's a difference between somebody. There's a difference between somebody who's willing to actually put in the effort. Even though you're going through some tough times, and then somebody who's like, "Oh, this is an inconvenience for me. Deuces."
Yeah.
Hey, stay tuned for the next episode. We're going to dive into this topic even more. Here on out, we got some more questions we need to run through.
So it's going to be a lightning round for the next few. So, homosexuality.
Definitely a sin.
So, 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 10 lists homosexuality as one of the sexually immoral.
It's a sexual sin, and sexual sin is bad.
Yeah, I think you can have urges. If you're not acting upon those urges, that's different than actually living out or living in the sin of being homosexual. That's my take.
Yeah. Agreed.
Dating or marrying somebody of another faith.
Unequally yoked. I don't think it's a sin. I think it's a bad idea.
I totally agree with that. I don't think it's a sin, but I think it's something you need to be extremely cautious.
it could lead to being sinful if you get married and then divorce, going into a marriage knowing you're unequally yoked.
Yeah.
But you have two forces that are pulling against each other that could cause you to separate from God.
Yeah.
Corinthians 6:14 says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness?" So it does warn against being unequally yoked with non-believers. So,
Yeah.
all right. Pornography.
Yes.
Yep. I would say that's a pretty short answer. Like, yes, absolutely. Looking at anything or anybody with lust in your eyes is the same as committing adultery.
Yep.
Falls under sexual deviance and sexual immorality.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Missing church or not going to church. Is that a sin?
No.
Like if there's like a long stretch where you haven't attended church, or you're like, man, I believe in God and I'm a Christian, but I'm not seeking out a church. Is that a sin?
Christ loves the church like a mother loves a child.
So that means you should be there.
You should be.
If you're not, I wouldn't say it's a sin.
Like a bride?
Right.
I'm not up on it, but it's something.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
The church is the bride of Christ.
Yes.
Church is the bride of Christ. There we go.
Yeah.
So be there.
Or be square.
Well, no.
Well,
that's a sin.
we need to be around other believers, other Christians. The one that fills us up. You have Proverbs where it says iron sharpens iron. It holds you accountable. There's a lot that goes on when you're around like-minded people than if you are to be away from church and you get around some non-believers and the way that they act. You're going to start emulating the crowd that you hang out with.
Yep.
So it's a good idea. It doesn't say that you have to be a part of church, because church in biblical times looked a lot different than church nowadays. So, but it is a good idea to go ahead and find a Bible believing church.
Things happen.
Yeah.
Like we didn't come for 6 weeks after my daughter was born.
Yeah.
Flu season is cold.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
Now my grandpa, he used to always say, devil's sitting on the fence post laughing Sunday morning because nobody get ready, and it'd just been easier for everybody to throw their hands up and say, we're not going. And he said, pigs would get out Sunday morning, cows would get out Sunday morning. He said everything went wrong Sunday morning because the devil was trying to keep you out.
Yeah.
True.
So you can go and go regardless, late, with your hair messed up, wearing shorts and a camo shirt, and be just fine. Just try to do it, but things happen, and don't think you're going to burn in hell for missing a couple Sundays a year,
And you can still remember the Sabbath and keep it holy.
Yep.
Yep.
You got a Bible at home, you can pick it up, open it, read it.
Absolutely.
Especially, I've been to a lot of churches, and not all churches are equal. There can be a lot of dissension in church where you may need a break from that church. Consider maybe a different church.
Yep.
They're not all the same. So there's a point sometimes where you got it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be opening your Bible or spending it in time with other Christians.
Exactly. All right, last two. Questioning or doubting God?
Yeah.
A sin?
Yeah.
I think it's a sin. I know I ask for forgiveness for that every single week. It's like, forgive me for thinking I could do this without you, or forgive me for thinking so little of you that you couldn't overcome this for me.
Yeah.
Like that's my prayer every week.
That's a fair point.
That is
I mean-
fair. I was about to be like, I don't know if I agree with
No.
that. That's kind of a fair point.
Nope.
Yeah.
Forgive me for thinking you can't get me out of the situation that you created.
I mean,
See, but
if you
created
if you
every
think about the
aspect of it.
Bible, it's highlighting the importance of having faith and trust in
Yeah.
God and His plan and everything. He's known what His plan is for you well before you were conceived.
Yep.
So,
but we've talked about the fact that being mad at God sometimes is not always wrong.
no, because we have to also understand.
That's being mad at him.
But it's questioning or doubting him. Like it's the same thing.
Joe, I think there's a different, because we have a very finite understanding of how things are compared to what God is. We are we live inside space, time, and matter, and we're trying to conceive what God, who is outside of space, time, and matter, is thinking and doing, planning. Yeah. We can't comprehend that. We can't wrap our minds around that. I think we can get frustrated. We can have misunderstandings, and but the thing is, are we going to God? Or are we running away from God because of those misunderstandings? Job was a perfect example. Extremely frustrated with everything going on in his life and all the bad stuff that was happening, but he went to God out of it, like in the middle of all of his frustrations. Mm-hmm. That's the big the big takeaway is he went to God with everything that was like all of his anger, all of his frustration. He went to God, everything.
And I don't think he was doubting him. It's probably, when I think about that, when I think about when I've been in those situations, it's like, I know you could fix this if you want to, but I know you're not going to. And I'm mad about it. So help me figure out why you're doing this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like a series of questions.
What you did is different though, because you're asking God, give me insight. Let me understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not cursing at him. You're not showing disrespect to him.
Right.
You're like,
is that what we're talking about?
You got to tell me.
Doubting God?
Doubting God or questioning God. It's in itself sinful.
I don't think going like, I don't understand, God, why you've put me in this situation. Why you've done this? Why am I supposed to learn something out of this? I don't understand. I'm frustrated with this.
I don't think that's
and going to him that way is different.
I would say it's not a sin. But when you're like, God, why would you do this? Or
when people say,
this is stupid. I don't
whatever.
And then you're just if it depends on if the action causes you to turn from God or to run to God.
So you're not accepting the fact that God's still in control.
At a certain point, if you say, because of this, I don't think you're in control, or I don't think what I've learned about you is right, and then you turn away from it, I think that right there obviously is sinful. But when you are taking all your anger and frustrations and you're taking it to God, asking for clarification or asking for the wisdom to figure out why something's going on, then I think you're perfectly fine.
Okay.
Because we're humans. We're going to get frustrated. Yes.
Because I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Because I want to know why, or I'm like confused on why this is happening.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong. Now, if you're Lieutenant Dan at the top of the pole going, come on, like, is that all you got? You're on a borderline of maybe getting struck down.
Mark this off your Raw Christians Men podcast bingo card. Lieutenant Dan reference.
Yeah. All right. Last one.
Yeah.
Last one. Celebrating non-Christian holidays. For example, Halloween. So is that a sin?
If it becomes satanic or blasphemous, but I don't think that. I actually like your little thing in here. I don't think I would personally classify kids dressing up and getting candy as worshiping another god.
Yeah.
Well, I had friends growing up that they weren't allowed.
Yeah.
And I lost a friend because my mom didn't know that, and they were over, and we dressed them up as a hobo, and we went trick or treating. So I don't know. I think it's a nickel, fire, and brimstone, but I think you hit the nail on the head.
I think if you're taking if you're taking direct part in worshiping another god or doing some kind of ritual or whatever because of the holiday, then yes, I think that is sinful. But if like Halloween,
going to
you have your kids, you're dressing up like as a Ghostbuster, and you're going around and they're getting candy.
Yeah,
that's God looks at the heart also and your intentions.
Yeah,
so that's the way I classify.
I just want to say one thing about all the holiday things. I really, really think the spiritual world is falling into that more than people really think. And I know this is going to be hard for people, but just like Santa Claus, when I was growing up, finding out my parents lied to me about Santa Claus, and now you're telling you mix Santa Claus in with Jesus. Okay, is Jesus right? What else did you lie to me about? That's how I felt when I was little. I'm like, if you mix this all up and you're telling me this, because I Jesus was this, good guy, and so was old Saint Nick. And it was confusing when I was a kid. I was like, I didn't want to confuse my kids. We didn't really do that very long.
We didn't make it very long until I was like,
did you doubt God was going to save your kids?
I just didn't know that much about it. Our family wasn't like that. But it was like the Easter Bunny and like Jesus. And it's like, this is weird. I was like, why do we have to, why can't it just be a celebration of what's real? Mm-hmm. It's like, why do we have to have, and I know that's a hard place because I was raised in a family that had that, and you're like, oh, this is kind of American tradition, but why? Why does it have to be? Why can't it just be, look, you've got salvation, and this is why we do this. And on Christmas, you can fill your tree up with
no marketable propaganda. There's no money to be made off the Bible, except for more Bibles.
Yeah, and then I think sometimes they're going to go, well, God's just like, telling your kids about Santa Claus is not really real, and so they can get you that not really real, and who's behind that?
Yeah.
Satan.
So I'm not trying to take anything away from people out there that want to do that. I'm just saying, be real cautious about that.
No, my grandma spilled the beans to all of us because she was like, I don't know why you're talking about Santa Claus. He ain't even real. She's like, I don't know why your parents told you that. We're like 8, years old. And she's just like,
Just rip the Band-Aid off now.
Yeah. We were getting babysat and she's just letting it have it. And then she had to like bring it back and was like, Saint Nick was a real person. But
Is this like a 4-hour episode? That's what I want to know.
It's only been
like,
2 hours.
It's like Joe Rogan.
It's only 2 hours.
It's not bad.
It's been 2 hours.
We've had longer.
That
was literally the last one. So
okay.
The good thing is that, like we said, none of those sins that we went through, none of them are unforgivable sins. So if you are living in one of those sins, or if you've committed those sins and you're worried about it, you can be forgiven by seeking forgiveness from God and asking for forgiveness and repenting, turning away.
Absolutely.
So
I do have one more thing I want to say about the divorce and marriages. Little statistic that I learned the other day. Couples who actively pray together have a 1% chance of getting divorced. And it's not because of any other reason except for the fact that they intertwine God into their relationship and they go to Him for everything. Yeah. That is what that is why they don't get divorced. 1%.
I don't know about you, but I prayed with my wife before we were even dating.
I can't say that. We were dating when I was praying with
just
her,
as a friend.
yeah.
Wow.
I prayed for her over the phone, and then rest history. Hubba hubba.
Hubba hubba. I think it's a good line to end on. Hubba hubba. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we'll go ahead and we'll close out with a prayer and get out of here because I know Kyle's itching.
Oh, I'm not itching. I just saw Tristan. He's looking at his phone. Those guys are squirming in their seats, and Aaron's gonna say something else.
Well, this is a podcast with Aaron Wills.
Yeah, I'm glad to have him.
I
here.
bring the entertainment.
We're crazy. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. So.
Yeah,
All right.
me too.
We'll go ahead and pray and get out of here. So, Lord and Heavenly Father, thank you for the men taking part in this discussion today, and I thank you for everybody listening. Lord, we ask you for the wisdom to be able to discern what actions are sinful or not. And we ask you for conviction from the Holy Spirit to identify and remove what is causing us to sin against you. We love you, and it's in Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. If you're enjoying this content and any other content that we're pushing out, please make sure that you like and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and now YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Raw Christian Men's Podcast. Please like, follow, and share this and all of our other content so we can continue to spread God's word. Lastly, if you have any questions for us or if you have any ideas for topics you would like to have discussed, you can email us at rawchristianmenspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hey,
real quick. Let's say real quick. Again, the Come and See podcast. We have episodes coming out here in a couple weeks. Be on the lookout for that. And it should be on all the same platforms.
Should be.
Be.
Yep. Kind of directed towards the younger group of people.
Men and women.
Men and women, yes.
So this is like coming out of high school, coming out of college, that age. Yeah. So young adults.
Yep.
Aaron,
last
future TikTok influencer. What's your?
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Where can they find you at?
Oh, I'm at Wilco Angus or Wilco One. I don't know. If you type in my name, it might pop up. But we're trying. But what I'm
trying to plug your channel here.
Yeah, I don't have a channel, man. I'm just doing stuff, and people like it, and some don't, and really don't like me, and that's fine too. But if you find me and you like ag stuff and cattle, check it out. But Brad's not going to brag on himself because that's not who he is. But he has developed and designed a a great logo for some merch for the Raw Christian Men's podcast. So if that's something anybody would be interested in, some patronage, let him hear it. So he's in the groundworks of it. He's wearing a sweatshirt now, limited edition. It's the only one in existence. But we'll have to post something about that and let you guys see it. So I like it a lot, and hopefully you guys do.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if we were quite ready for pushing out merch, but if there's a market for it, then maybe we
Hey, the merch is merching, man. You're wearing it.
So, all right. Well, on that live and vibrant note, we'll
Catch
go ahead
you on
and,
next.
So, all right, we'll catch you next time.